what is the difference between a designer, website designer, web developer, and a lot of things in between? Well, in today's Morning for Visionaries, it's going to be a short and easy one because it is a very simple thing to understand, but very important to understand the difference between all those things, and kind of one additional question about website developers, because there's always something weird, people calling themselves website developers when they're really not. So in today's Morning for Visionaries, it's helping you understand what the differences are. So first and foremost, and probably the easiest question, what is the difference between a designer and a website designer? A designer is a general label for anybody who can create graphics online, though that's also kind of a misnomer because then at that point they could be called, and probably should have a better label, such as a graphic artist, illustrator, and kind of, you can see where I'm going with this thing. A website designer is a niched version of a designer or creative person, visual creative person online, because there's many schools of these types of things and paths you can learn, and website designer is one of them. So can a designer create web designs? Yes, probably shouldn't. Can a web designer do creative media design, packaging design? Probably, but shouldn't, because they're a rather niched role. A website designer has to know how the general user experience online should work, like how it should practically look like when converting these ideas into practical applications of buttons, styles, maybe grids that they're using, what the animation should be, and what kind of information should be passed on to the development team. A website designer, because they've specialized in this and thus communicating with a web development team and basically web professionals, they know that industry and that technology and what should go into web designs. Designer, they could be great at designing things. They could make some really wonderful art and creative pieces out there in the world, but they might not be great about website designs because they might not know what structure they need to put in, or they might design things that are just really not practical or good for putting online, or they might make something so horribly graphics heavy as that it'll never load online. You might have a 50 megabyte web page when it really doesn't need to be for the same type of user experience. So that's the big difference. But then the question is, well, what's the difference between a web designer and a web developer? Aren't they the same thing? No, they are not. A web designer is, and it should be, a person who knows how to make the website look good visually without any ever touching code. They don't need to know code. They can, and probably should know a little bit just so they can understand the mechanics behind all of this thing. But a website designer is the person or the team who creates these things online to look good. They create the Photoshop files or the XD files, the template styles, the visuals of all these things that are going to go online. That is the website designer. And they can also craft the user experiences. The website developer, then, is thus the person who does the coding of said designs. They can also be the technical person to figure out what pieces should connect and communicate with the design team to figure out what's working and what's not working to make sure that these designs and experiences are actually good. And then the final piece is, what about those weird people who call themselves web developers and are really not? This point comes up because I've been trying to hire a reasonably priced mid-ish level web developer for a little while, and I'm having trouble because a lot of these people calling themselves web developers when they can't even do any development. If this person can't code, can't show you any actual fundamental back-end, middle-end code at all, they're not a web developer. They're just a person who happens to know some visual tools in WordPress or whatever tool you want them to do. They're not a web developer. They're an admin person. They're a slightly nerdier, potentially, person who knows some front-end technology, but they're not a web developer. A web developer knows code and how code works, both front-end, back-end, and middle. That's a web developer. If they're just using Elementor or Visual Composer, or just Gutenberg or whatever it might be, or they never touch code, that's not a web developer, and they shouldn't be calling themselves a web developer. So that's it for today's Morning for Visionaries. You now know what a web designer is, what a web developer, and what a proper web developer is, and how they are different from each other. If you have any questions about what these roles are and what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing, let me know in the comments, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. See you next time. Bye.